we are that good. It's okay. Andrew, what do you see? You can stand up there.
You can stand here? Okay, go ahead. Don't you be late.
It's good to see everyone.
Okay, are we ready to go?
We need the optional photo. So.
Is it closer?
No, you're the star.
カメラマンの方よろしいでしょうか。Okay.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Foreign Correspondents Club of Japan. My name is Dennis Normile. I will be the moderator this afternoon. Before we get started, please join me in the usual ritual of ensuring that your phones are switched off or on manner mode so we don't interrupt the speaker. Our topic this afternoon is artificial intelligence. This has, after a long gestation, artificial intelligence has suddenly been in the news almost continuously for the last couple of years, especially after the launch of ChatGPT, which is just over a year ago, and it supposedly will answer all the questions you have about anything. Artificial intelligence has been a point of controversy. There are some who think it's going to be a boon for society, and others who think it will not be. Elon Musk famously said that he called AI a threat to humanity. Our guest this afternoon has a more balanced view. He says that he is wildly optimistic about the possibilities of using artificial intelligence to improve society, but he does worry about the impact on the labor market. He thinks that it could be disruptive and that many people may have to retrain for jobs in the new AI economy. He was born in the UK to parents who hailed from Hong Kong. He went through his tertiary education entirely in the United States at some of the top institutions in the US, including MIT and Stanford University. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's founded several AI-based startups, and he has a fund that invests in startups. He's also long been concerned about education. He founded a system that provides massive open online courses in topics related to AI and other issues. And with that, I'll turn that over to our guest, Andrew Ng.
Thank you. Thanks, Dennis. All right. So thanks, everyone. Thanks, everyone, that's joining us here in person, and also hi to all of our online viewers. What I thought I'd do is chat for 20 minutes about AI to lay a basic description of where I think we are, and then look forward to taking everyone's questions and having a conversation. So a lot of hype and excitement about AI. And I think one of the tricky things to understand about AI, and this is a key concept, is that it's a general purpose technology, meaning it's a technology that's not useful just for one thing, like a microwave oven is useful just for one thing. But AI, similar to, say, electricity or the internet, is useful for many different things. In fact, if I ask you, what is electricity good for? It's almost difficult to answer that question because it's so pervasive and used for so many different things, and AI is like that too. And it turns out that over the last 15 years or so, there have been two major waves of AI innovation, which is why today we often think of AI as a collection of tools. And I want to just very briefly describe what are the two most important AI tools today. And they're called supervised learning, which is also called predictive AI, and then generative AI. So about 10, 15 years ago, one AI tool started to work really well called supervised learning or predictive AI or sometimes deep learning. But this is AI that's very good at giving you input-output mapping. So given an input, like here's a piece of email, and output is just spam, 0, 1. Or for one of the most lucrative applications I ever worked on in a big tech company was input an ad and some information about you, the user, and output, are you likely to click on this or not? So by showing slightly more relevant ads, this technology, supervised learning, is driving more than 100 billion annual incremental revenue today for a big ad tech platform such as Google. Or input an X-ray image, output a medical diagnosis, or input a audio clip and output a text transcript. So there are many of these applications built using supervised learning. By building AI systems, you can input something and learn to map this to an appropriate output. And in fact, even with the applications of supervised learning, like just mentioned, from email spam filtering to text to speech recognition, to online advertising, to medical diagnosis, this one technology is useful for all of these different applications, which is a sign of it being a general purpose technology. So about 10, 15 years ago, supervised learning started to work really well. In the last decade, it's created tremendous economic value. There are at least many hundreds of billions of dollars, maybe more than $1 trillion, I'm not sure today, being created using supervised learning. Then a new kid on the block that started to work really well, maybe a couple years ago, certainly caught the popular imagination about a year ago, is generative AI. And this is a different tool than supervised learning. And what generative AI is really good at is generating high quality media, such as text, images, audio, maybe video. And there's a lot of hype about generative AI. So I want to take just 1 minute to explain in some depth how it actually works. How does generative AI actually generate text? It turns out that at the heart of generative AI is using that first technology I described, supervised learning, to repeatedly predict the next word. So the input is an input prompt, and the output is what's the next word. Then you can, by having supervised learning, input a piece of text and repeatedly predict what's the next word, what's the next word, what's the next word. That's at the heart of how generative AI learns to write text for you. And it turns out that when you take a supervised learning or predictive AI piece of software and train it on maybe 1 trillion words, download it from the internet, then you get a large language model like ChatGPT or Bard that becomes very useful for many different tasks. And I'm obviously omitting important technical details, but at the heart of generative AI is this idea of repeatedly giving an input of a bunch of text. The output is predict the next word. And this has turned out to be very valuable for different businesses. Now, sorry, I have my notes here. So generative AI today has reached a point where I think almost all knowledge workers can benefit from using it, be it as a copy editor or brainstorming partner or someone to help you summarize articles or help you answer basic questions. And so many reporters I know, many executives I know, really many knowledge workers in many different functional roles use generative AI, every day. I actually use generative AI every day myself, and it gives me a productivity boost. And in terms of economic growth, one challenge we have to overcome, though, is that most people in most job functional roles will need a little bit of training to know how to use it safely and responsibly. So be it a marketer, a recruiter, or a salesperson, I think that in many businesses, I was actually just at Davos a couple of weeks ago where there was a lot of discussion and interest about business implementation of AI. And one of the keys is if you have a large workforce of knowledge workers, then providing them a little bit of training to teach them how to use generative AI, that can get a lot of workers a productivity boost, almost right away. And many of you will have seen the web user interface implementation of generative AI. So if you go to ChatGPT or Bard or Bing Chat or various startups offering a website that offers generative AI services. So that's a very powerful tool. It turns out that there's a second way of using generative AI that I think is equally powerful, maybe it'll turn out to be even more powerful, but it's not as visible to consumers. And that's software API implementations of generative AI. And by API, I mean, rather than a human sitting at a computer, typing a text prompt and getting a response, there are now a lot of software developers that are writing software to call ChatGPT or Google Spark, Gemini software, or any of these other large language models technology. And so some specific examples. I see a lot of businesses using AI to summarize internal text documents. But rather than asking employees to copy-paste everything into ChatGPT to get a summary, instead, I see many software engineers writing software to take some internal corporate communication system, maybe some of the news articles you're writing, if that's useful to reporters, and to use software to send that text to ChatGPT or really GPT 3.5 or GPT-4, basically ChatGPT or Gemini or these large language model services, and get back a summary of an article. Another use case I'm seeing a lot is many businesses are implementing many different flavors of chatbot or customer support types of operations. And again, what that takes is a software engineer writing some software to call these programmer interfaces. So it's a computer program using this large language model, generative AI software, rather than a human sitting there. And this is creating a lot of new business applications. And because generative AI is also a general purpose technology, meaning it's useful for many different things, at my team at AI Fund, we're seeing a lot of very creative use cases of generative AI, from using it to help process electronic health records, to processing legal documents, to coaching people on romantic relationship advice, to on and on and on. There are many different pieces of many different types of text, as well as sometimes other data that's being used by generative AI. And this is leading to an explosion of creativity in terms of what software we can build. And in fact, just as one concrete example, if you take maybe summarizing articles or taking emails and routing it to the right department, it turns out that there are a lot of AI applications that would previously have taken me and very skilled AI teams maybe 6 to 12 months to build. But today, because of the new generative AI capabilities, there are at least hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of developers around the world that can build in 1 or 2 days what took me 6 months to build just a few years ago. And that dramatic lowering of the bar of what it takes to build certain AI applications is leading to an explosion of creativity and new AI systems and new AI products being built. So I find that very exciting. But of course, one of the important pieces of work that lies ahead of us is to still go and find out what are the applications that we now want to build. So just as when supervised learning started to work well 10 years ago, it took us a long time to figure out, how do you use this for online advertising? How do you use this for medical diagnosis? How do you use this for financial services, on and on and on? And I think it will take us, frankly, at least years, many years, I think, to take this amazing generative AI technology, the large language model technologies like ChatGPT and Gemini and Bard, and figure out all the applications we can apply to all around the economy. So when I speak with business leaders, I end up getting the most interest about two things. One is upskilling knowledge workers to use generative AI, to use website tool. The second is I see a lot of businesses wonder, how would generative AI affect my business? And when I speak with CEOs, a common question is something like, I have 10,000 or 100,000 employees. What are all my people actually doing? It turns out none of us really know exactly what our large teams are doing, and how exposed is the workload of my team to automation or augmentation to AI. And it turns out that there's a recipe that some of my friends have actually really pioneered by one of my friends, a Stanford professor, Eric Brynjolfsson, but there's a recipe for task analysis of jobs that are found to be very useful for businesses to understand where the biggest generative AI opportunities are. And in fact, I know many of you are with media businesses or other businesses. It actually fascinates me to figure out, how does the task analysis of the media business surface, hopefully, opportunities for the media business to leverage generative AI. But here's the idea. there's been a lot of discussion about AI automating jobs, and that's an important societal discussion to have. But it turns out that from a technical implementation perspective, I find it more useful not to analyze AI automating jobs, but to instead break jobs down into many different tasks and to analyze AI automation of tasks. So it turns out jobs are often bundles of many different tasks, and the more useful unit of analysis is what tasks are amenable to automation or augmentation or assistance by AI. So let me illustrate this with an example. Actually, my parents are here, and my father is actually a doctor. But just to illustrate an example with radiology, since AI affecting radiologists' jobs has been often talked about. It turns out that we often say, oh, AI can read X-rays, but that's actually an overly simplistic analysis. Radiologists, it turns out, do many different tasks. They do read X-ray images, that's just one task. They also gather patient histories, they talk to patients to find out about the patient background. They also monitor and run the imaging machines. They also run the X-ray machine. They also mentor younger doctors. They also have to plan out treatments and on and on and on. So radiologists actually do many different tasks. And so instead of asking, as an AI builder, I tend not to ask, can AI do the job of a radiologist? I find it more useful to ask, of all the tasks that a radiologist does, which ones are amenable to automation by AI or sometimes augmentation, where we hope a person. And one surprising thing that I found, because I've done this analysis many times, is the highest return on investment task is often not the first one we tend to think, because when we think radiologists, they read X-rays, software engineers, they write code, but that's usually the most distinctive task about that job role. But the task that has the highest ROI is often some surprising other things. So it turns out that, for example, radiologists actually spend some time gathering patient histories, and that might be easier to automate or augment using AI than just reading X-rays. And we often think software engineers write code, but it turns out that software engineers do a lot of other things. They also write documentation, for example, and writing documentation may be easier for AI to augment or assist than that task. And one of the things that fascinates me is I think the newsroom has such a complicated workflow. I'm actually fascinated by the idea of doing an analysis of the tasks that take place in a media organization to think what are the most useful ways that reporters and news organizations can use AI. And because jobs are bundles of tasks, this is why also I think the worries about AI replacing jobs has been a bit overblown. I don't want to say no jobs will be lost. I think some jobs will be fully automated or largely automated, so some jobs will go away. And I think we should create a safety net and be respectful and make sure people are treated well. I think that's very important. But I think the number of jobs that will go away is probably maybe fewer than most people think, because it turns out that a lot of jobs may have, let's say, 10 tasks, 10 major tasks and a lot of minor tasks. And when we do these analyses, we often find that AI can automate, let's say, 3 out of 10 tasks. And what that means is if we use AI, it's a significant productivity boost. If 3 out of 10 tasks can be automated, but those other, let's say, 7 other tasks, we still really need people to do those tasks. And so the jobs, for many jobs will be fine, but there is a need to upskill individuals to use generative AI, because I think in many job categories, AI won't replace people, but people that use AI will replace people that don't. And this creates a significant challenge ahead of us for the upskilling and training to help really, how do we upskill almost all knowledge workers in our economy to use generative AI? I think that's a significant challenge ahead of us. And then lastly, I think in preparing for this, I was asked to talk a little bit about regulatory affairs. And I feel like there's a lot of global interest in regulating AI, and there have been a few major sort of government-level announcements, including the Hiroshima AI framework, as well as the United States White House executive order, and there was also the European Union, the EU AI Act. So I think we need good regulation for AI. That would really help protect consumers and help the industry move forward. Unfortunately, all around the world, I'm seeing quite a lot of, I think, bad proposals for AI regulation. And in terms of AI regulations, if you were to remember just one thing from this. I hope you remember this, which is that it'd be great to regulate. We should regulate AI applications. But the problem is when we have bad regulations on AI technology. So we should regulate applications, not technology. And let me just make sure I explain what I mean by that. So technology, AI technology, is basically a piece of math, right? So some team of software engineers has written a piece of math, and they write software that has made a computer read 1 trillion words on the internet, and this software runs in the data center. So that piece of math running in the computer in some hidden away data center, that's the technology. When someone takes the technology and uses that to build a medical device, or to build an application like ChatGPT or Bard, or to build a self-driving car, or to build underwriting software to decide whether or not to make a loan, that's an application. So the technology is a piece of math that normal users and consumers don't really have access to. That technology is a general purpose technology, can be used for many different things. And when a developer takes that technology and turns it into something that you can buy or use, then that's the application, right? And it turns out that because AI is a general purpose, and it turns out that a few frameworks, the European Union has talked about taking a tiered approach to risk. The Hiroshima framework also used similar language, taking a risk-based approach. And I think that's a good idea. If something is more risky, let's regulate that more. But the mistake that I'm seeing the US and the European Union make, that fortunately is dialed back a little bit, but the mistake is to try to say, I've seen some naive statements from the White House Executive Order as well as from the EU AI Act, proposing this idea that bigger AI models are inherently more risky. But the AI model is just a piece of math. It's very difficult to think about how is that risky or not. Whereas when you look at concrete applications, if you build a medical device, that seems risky. I mean, we want a medical device to be safe and not kill someone. So we can understand the risk of a medical device and regulate against that. If you have a self-driving car, well, we know what the risks of a self-driving car are, so let's figure that out and regulate that to protect consumers. Or underwriting software, we don't want underwriting software to be biased, so we know what can go wrong with underwriting. So let's figure out the risk of that application and protect consumers from that. And I think if we do the harder thing of figuring out what are the actual risky scenarios and regulate that, then we could protect consumers and unleash the technology to create a lot of very beneficial applications. But the problem with some of the wording in the White House Executive Order, as well as in some parts of the EU AI Act, is this idea that a bigger AI model is more risky. And to put in place, the proposals to put in place burdensome reporting and other requirements on these types of AI models. And unfortunately, I think that will just slow down basic technology development and slow down all of these thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of many applications that technology could be used for. In fact, one thing that's been quite clear for the last, I don't know, more than 6 months, for quite some period of time, is that there has been a significant lobbying effort, well, informal and formal lobbying effort by quite a few players, including some big companies that would rather not have to compete with open source software, to put in place what I think are pretty burdensome requirements on open source software. So open source software, all of us, assuming you use a smartphone or a laptop, you're using open source software. The way that software is built, one of the key building blocks of software is there are many developers that for whatever reason choose to write software, post it on the internet, free for anyone else to use and build on top of. So for example, internet communications, the TCP/IP stack, basically the way your cell phone or your laptop communicates on the internet. A lot of that is built on top of open source software. So if not for developers writing software and posting these building blocks free for anyone to build on, I don't think my smartphone would. I don't think with all of these wonderful technologies we do today. And it turns out that while there are closed source commercial large language model providers, there's also a very vibrant open source community with many researchers building generative AI software, large language model software, and posting on the internet free for anyone to use and build on. And this has been wonderful. There's been so much creativity and innovation all around the world building on these open source building blocks. Now, for some big tech companies that are spending a lot of money to train closed source models, it's actually really inconvenient if someone else gives away this stuff for free, even though I think it's good for the world when someone does. And I've seen significant lobbying efforts. I've seen this upfront and close in the United States. I'm quite confident it's happening in Europe as well and other places, to use the false name of safety to put in place very burdensome reporting and regulatory requirements on open source software, where the ideas are, well, don't you want to make sure your open source software is safe? And to make sure it's safe, let's have a licensing requirement and make you go through all these testing and reporting. And if you do that, then that will stifle open source developers, so stifle R&D, stifle researchers doing R&D and releasing that freely on the internet. I think that would be really crushing for global innovation. And for Japan specifically, it's actually quite clear to me that if these efforts succeed, many countries, including Japan, will be one of the nations left behind. In some parts of the United States, there is an argument that I disagree with, that the US may be better off if, we stifle open source, because America and maybe UK do have the leading generative AI technology. So if we slow down open source and slow down the dissemination of this technology, maybe the US would be better off. I don't agree with this, but there are some people that think this way. So I don't think it's in the US interest to stifle open source. And actually, I feel like compared to 6 months ago, most government leaders kind of are much more appreciative of the need to protect open source and protect innovation. But whereas I think there is that argument that could be made about the United States, it's really clear to me that if efforts to stifle open source succeed, because then I think there's a false argument that the US would be better off, but I think it's definitely almost all other nations, including Japan, will definitely be much worse off by slowing down dissemination of tech. So I think as Japan and almost all nations think about this, I think the need to protect open source would clearly be in the Japanese national interest and most other nations. Let's see. So I think when we think about, so returning to the tiered risk approach of AI, regulating more risky technology, that's such a great idea. The mistake that both the White House and the EU have made is saying more intelligent systems are inherently more risky, as opposed to looking at applications and figure out what are the risky applications. And there have been a few regulatory proposals in the United States that I think are actually quite promising. For example, there's an act called the PATA Act. Sorry, I forget. Platform Accountability and Transparency Act, I think. I may have that wrong. It's spelled PATA, that demands more transparency from social media companies, for example. Because it turns out, if we take the idea of a tiered risk approach seriously, then I think that a social media company, say, or a website or AI website that serves 100 million users, that's just much riskier than a small message board with just 100 users. I mean, if you serve 100 million users, the risk of disinformation or misinformation is much higher than if you serve 100 users. So I think an example of a regulatory framework that would take an appropriate tiered risk approach would be to regulate the big companies more and demand more transparency. Because what has happened in the last decade or two is when there were problems with social media or internet search or online video recommendation systems, we collectively did not even find out about the problems until many years later, when some smart journalist or a whistleblower or some academic researcher happened to find that problem. And today, when I walk around Silicon Valley, there are generative AI companies that I don't know. I suspect there may be problems, but I don't know, and none of us know. And if there are problems today, I would much rather give governments and regulators and maybe academics tools to find out about it now, rather than wait 5 years or 10 years until by luck or a whistleblower we happen to discover it then. And so I think one example of regulation that takes seriously a tiered risk approach to AI, a tiered risk approach, would be to just demand transparency, especially the bigger platforms, so we can get those signals in case there are some problematic effects. But just bring this part of it to close. I think if you remember just one thing from the regulatory part of what I'm saying, I think regulate applications, not technology. That I think would be a good way to protect consumers and also let the technology move forward. And then I'll just say one last thing, then we'd love to wrap and take questions, which is when I feel like people do have fears, worries about AI, and when we think about regulation and do we want to invest more in AI or slow it down, I tend to take it back to one very basic question, which is, do you think we're better off or not, or worse off, with more intelligence in the world? I think of intelligence as a power to use skills and knowledge to make better decisions. And as a society, we pay a lot to build human intelligence. It costs a lot to feed, train, and educate, a wise human being. Until recently, the primary source of intelligence we had was human intelligence, but now we increasingly have also artificial intelligence. And yes, intelligence can be used for nefarious purposes, but over the last many centuries, I think that people became smarter and more educated and more intelligent. That was a huge driver for the progress of civilization. And so as I think about AI, while we should mitigate against the negative use cases and not all intelligence is used for positive use cases, I often think, do we want governments to strongly encourage the development of intelligence, this new form of intelligence, or do we think we need to stifle this before it gets too far? And I believe that, and I think for the first time in history, we see a path to making intelligence cheap. Because intelligence is so expensive, it's expensive to hire a highly skilled doctor to examine your medical condition and advise you. It's expensive to hire a tutor gently to patiently coach your child. But whereas human intelligence is expensive, artificial intelligence can be made cheap. And I'd love to see a future where anyone can inexpensively hire an army of staff to think things through for you. And where we also have additional intelligence with which to tackle society's largest problems, such as climate change and healthcare and pandemics. So that, let me thank you all very much and look forward to questions and conversation.
Thank you, Andrew. Do you want to take a seat? Thank you very much. One thing which I mentioned during my introduction was your interest in education. And you founded a course platform, would you call it, called Coursera. Would you like to take a minute and explain something about that?
Sure. So let's see. Coursera is an online educational company that offers courses from a large number of universities and industry partners to people around the world. So I guess Coursera started a little bit over 10 years ago when I was teaching at Stanford, and I realized that I was walking into the same classroom year after year, delivering basically the same lecture, even telling the same jokes. I realized that by taking my course, which is an AI course, a machine learning course, and putting that online, it could reach a much larger audience and help a lot more people learn about this amazing AI technology that I was excited about. And since then, Coursera's continued to grow, and today has a global audience and a large catalog of courses. In fact, one of the courses that I released on Coursera just a few months ago is Generative AI for Everyone, which I developed as a non-technical course to help people understand how to use generative AI in your own daily lives. And when I was actually creating that course, one of the user demographics that I had in mind was reporters, because I think there's a lot of hype about AI, and if reporters are interested in learning about generative AI to help us get the facts out there, we could have better conversations and make better decisions as a society about this very important technology.
So in that course, Generative AI for Everyone is available to journalists.
Oh, yes. And so actually, I think one of the demographics I really care about is, independent media, freedom of press. So my team's actually the standing policy. This going out live stream is a little bit nervous saying this on the live stream, but my team's actually a standing policy that, if a reporter wants access to it for free, just get us your email address and we'll get it to you for free. So if any of you want free access to generative AI for everyone, if you catch Ellen, who's on my team, or me, and make sure we have your email address after that, we'd love to send you an invite to just get access to it for free. Hopefully we're not about to get 10,000 emails from the live stream viewers, but if you're watching this online and you're a reporter, email press@Deeplearning.AI as well, and we'll try to get it to you for free. But maybe I really care about independent journalism, freedom of press. I think in this age, and there's so much hype about AI. Frankly, as an AI person, we need your help, right, to go and tell the world truthful and accurate stories about this very important technology. So if any of you want to spend three and a half hours watching a few videos to gain a non-technical understanding of generative AI, what it is, and how it works, as well as how you may or may not want to use it in your own professional, personal lives, let everyone know. We'll send you a free invite code after this.
Maybe we should make that offer open only to members of the FCCJ.
Sure, yeah.
All right, we'll move on to questions, starting with questions from journalists. Who wants to go first? Tokumoto-san? Do you want me to? Okay, we had Tokumoto-san is a freelance writer, longtime member of the club, and he is here, but he has a sore throat, and so he asked me to read his question. Could you tell us your view of AI's influence on religion? In Japan, there have been discussions about whether or not AI can give sermons, replacing Buddhist priests based on Buddhist scriptures.
I see.
And so do you think AI could replace the role of priests, at least partly? More broadly, how could it possibly change religions throughout the world?
Boy, I honestly don't know. This is an interesting question. I think I saw a news article the other day about an AI system being used to successfully lead a religious service, where there were a few hundred people that attended a religious service, where I think clearly religion is a very deeply personal thing, so I think it's up to religious leaders and individuals to decide, is this a legitimate way of practicing religion? And I don't have a view on that. But I feel like for a lot of communicators, be it religious leaders or reporters or other communicators, I do think that if you were to do even a task-based analysis of even a religious leader, I see a meaningful chance that religious leader may decide that they could use AI to automate or make their own workflow a little bit efficient. But whether that's an appropriate thing to do, I would defer to the specific religions to make that decision.
Okay. Other questions from journalists first? Okay. No one else has their hand up, so right here. Yes, please come to the microphone and give us your name and affiliation.
Thank you very much, Professor. My name is Yusuke Wada. I'm associate member. As of today, officially, I'm the IT chairman of the IT committee chairman of FCCJ. And I used to work for the sales for the AI and blockchain as well. And I'm also a funeral director, which I was doing the business of bringing back the deceased using GAN, generative AI, and trying to do that business. My question, actually, I'd like to hear your opinion about. Recently, we have the exponential growth of artificial intelligence, AI, but as from the educational point of view, as you said, we are seeing a massive, actually, exponential decrease in human intelligence on the mass people on the internet. Do you have any, can you have any opinion on the correlation of that? Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know. I have to admit, I'm not aware of data myself showing a decrease of human intelligence. I feel like AI is a wonderful tool. When we got calculators, a lot of us outsourced basic calculations to a calculator. And today, I have no sense of direction, partly because I decided to just outsource that to GPS. So, if you take me 2 blocks, I will be lost. I won't be able to find my way there because I actually decided to just outsource my navigation to GPS. So I think there's still plenty of work for people to do. Today, at least AI today and for the near future, for the foreseeable future, is wonderful at automating a subset of tasks, but not all tasks. And I think it's wonderful that AI can take some tasks off our plate to let us focus on other tasks that at least AI can't do now and for the near future. I don't know. I maybe I'm skeptic. I actually don't see humanity getting dumber over the years, but maybe I'm not looking in the right places. I suspect humanity is still getting smarter, and these tools will actually make us smarter, but I'm not sure.
Further questions, John?
John Boyd, freelance writer. Given that artificial intelligence takes its learning from, say, 1 trillion words that you explained, those words are created by humans. So why would you call it artificial intelligence at a higher level than human intelligence? That's one, given that its source is coming from humans, generated text, for example. If you're saying that, say, in 50 years' time, because of increased computer processing, etc., it can jump to a level above what we can see today, and it can actually look at videos, look at television, look at text, look at all media, and come to some kind of truth. I wonder if governments would allow that. For example, even today, if artificial intelligence was able to see video of, say, President Biden not being able to walk off the stage because he's not sure which way to go, for example, or some of the crazy things he's been saying, wouldn't the government sort of say, no, we can't have this truth? So 2 questions.
Sure, yeah. So first, so I don't know that I would consider AI a higher form of intelligence than humans. Is that what you asked? But maybe, let's see. So it turns out that there are these philosophical questions about machine intelligence and human intelligence. And what I see is that even children, human children, learn from their elders and learn from the words and images and actions of adults. And so I feel like AI also learns from the words and so on of those that came before it, just like our children. And in fact, if you go to art museum, you may see, when I visit art museums in the United States, I often see novice artists quietly sitting on the floor, practicing copying the work of the masters. And it's not that they'll sell forgeries, it's it's by looking at the work of the grandmasters and trying to practice copying the grandmasters that after doing this enough, the human brain kind of magically teaches them how to paint in their own style and have their own unique distinctive flair. So there are challenging questions about copyright. Should AI be allowed to do this, right? Humans are allowed to look at the work of the masters of art and copy them and use that to synthesize their own style. And I think our society is still having a debate, and it remains to be seen where it falls, of should AI be allowed to look at, the art paintings of others to learn to synthesize his own style. And then to the second, not sure I've answered your first, but to the second question, I certainly hope the governments won't stop us from publishing the truth. I think there are difficult questions about deep fakes or synthesized AI images, and should we pass laws to require watermarking of AI synthesized images? I think that actually might be a reasonable idea. Or should we instead try to verify what is not AI generated? So should we build software into our cameras so that when you take a picture with your camera or smartphone, that is signed off as authentic? So instead of signing off on what's synthesized, maybe we should sign what is authentic as a way to verify what's real. So I think these proposals are being discussed right now that are being quite difficult. But I certainly hope that well-run democracies won't be as awful as the idea of stopping AI from offering another perspective on the truth. That seems like a pretty dystopian thing that maybe some totalitarian governments will do that, but I certainly hope that democratic governments won't.
Can I follow up?
Very quickly.
But given,
Come to the mic.
given that all the text, etc., is inputted by humans, humans have their own biases. So the AI is going to have that bias in its answer, right? And if I use the word deeper, higher intelligence, didn't you say different intelligence? AI is a different intelligence?
Oh yes, it's a different
So
intelligence.
why is
AI.
it different if it's coming from human source information?
Oh, I see. Oh, cool. Thank you. Sorry, I think I misheard the word. Sorry. So, right. So, yes, AI is biased. When you train AI systems on internet text, which is biased against, certain genders and certain contexts or certain ethnicities, AI can reflect the bias of the data it's trained on. But here's the good news. It turns out that our technologies for reducing the bias of AI is improving every day. So today, it turns out that if you go to most of the large language models and try to get it to repeat, common gender or racial and so on stereotypes, today's AI systems are already much less biased than the average piece of text on the internet, because we have technologies that go in to tell it things like, treat these two groups of people as equal and just don't exhibit certain types of biases. It's as if you can go into the AI's brain and zero out or nearly zero out certain types of bias. And while technology is not perfect and it still exhibits some types of bias in some cases, and we should keep on working on that, I feel like I have much better tools for reducing the bias of AI than I have tools in reducing the bias in humans. We just don't know how to get rid of racism in humans. We have much better tools for reducing racism, for example, in AI. So already, and I don't want to pretend it's not a problem, but I think it is a problem, but we have such good tools for working to improve it, and those tools are getting better every day. So most AI systems today, I think, are actually less biased than the average human alive, probably. And AI is a very different type of intelligence than human intelligence. So for example, AI can read text far faster than any of us can, and generate text far faster than any of us can write. So it's really good at some things. But at the heart of AI, of generative AI, is just repeatedly predicting the next word based on text as seen on the internet. And on one hand, it's amazing that this idea of repeatedly predicting the next word, that it can generate so much amazing text. But on the other hand, humans do so much more than repeatedly predict the next word. And so it turns out to be a very different type of intelligence that's much better than any human at certain things, like arithmetic, but also much worse than any human at certain things. Like even today, we still can't build AI to safely drive a car, right, almost anywhere the way that probably most of us can. So a lot of things that AI can't do, which is why when we do the task-based analysis of jobs, we often find that it's only a subset of the tasks that AI can do.
Very good. George?
Hello, I'm working for Swiss Television. My name is Baumgartner. I would like to ask you why the US is leading the world with AI and why a country like Japan is so backward and still insists to use the fax machine, and how do you evaluate the state of AI in Europe or even in my own country, Switzerland, which is also involved with AI? And what is the purpose of your visit here in Japan? Do you meet government officials, companies? And then I would like also to ask you questions about the AI company. They lost $190 billion in market capitalization after Alphabet and Microsoft published their latest result. Does it mean that AI companies, in the eyes of investors, are still not making any money?
Sure. Boy, okay. Let's see. So let me try to remember all three questions. So, I think right at this moment in time, there is a significant concentration of AI talent in just one place. which is Silicon Valley. I've never seen it like this before in my life, but I think this is what happened. So it was my former team, the Google Brain team. So I used to run, I started and led the Google Brain team in Google. There was a team that helped Google adopt modern AI. And it was the Google Brain team that invented a key technology called the transformer neural network that's powering a lot of modern generative AI. And what happened was OpenAI, which is also in San Francisco, made an early and very good bet on implementing the transformer neural network, this technology at scale. And what happened is over the last few years, there were really two drivers, Google Brain, my former team, and OpenAI, that drove a lot of this technology. And then over time, sometimes people will leave these two teams and start businesses nearby, but this has led to a very intense concentration of talent just in Silicon Valley. And even when I go to other US cities, I mean, I love Seattle, I love New York, I just don't see this concentration of talent there. But having said that, Japan's always had a very strong tech industry, and whereas the skill to build the technology, that AI math, is still very concentrated but diffusing rapidly, I think that Japan and many other places actually have pretty good application building talent. In fact, you talked about valuation of companies. Whenever there's a new wave of technology, we all, media, but people, we like to talk about the tech companies like OpenAI, Google, Azure, Amazon, AWS, and so on, because the tech is fun to talk about. But it turns out that for the tech companies to do well, we need the applications built on top of the tech to do even better, because the only way for the tech companies, the tool providers, to do well is if the applications built on the top of them generate even more revenue so that they can afford to pay the tech companies. So what's happened last year was tons of rise in valuation, certainly, of a bunch of the tech companies. But for these valuations to sustain, let's hope the application companies generate even more revenue. I'm optimistic that will happen. And in fact, when we meet with different teams in Japan, I see a lot of promise in the skill set, in growing the skill set to build either Japan-specific or maybe even international applications using these tools. And then, actually, to answer your question, my team AI Fund has quite a few partners in Japan. So we've been visiting partners and actually working with different businesses on building on different AI projects. Yeah, what's your third question?
The decline in the stock market value of
right.
the company.
So OpenAI's valuation, no comment on that. Actually, Sam Altman was my student at Stanford way back, and I think OpenAI is a great company. What's the right valuation? That's up to different investors to form their own perspectives. I do think that the business fundamentals are there. So some of the large, ad platforms are already bringing in, I think, billions of dollars using generative AI to improve ad copy. Those are the rumors I'm pretty sure are true. Low single-digit billions of dollars, I think, is a range of some of the value add of generative AI. And it's a small fraction of the low hundreds of billions of dollars that, say, Google may bring in on an annual basis, more than $100 billion that Google may bring in on an annual basis. But I think the reason I'm optimistic about the long-term future of generative AI is the business fundamentals of significant value creation. They really are there, but it will take us some time because it's a general purpose technology to go to all these industries, figure out what do we do in healthcare, what do you do in financial services, what do you do in education, what do you do in all these other industry sectors to build out these applications. But I'm quite confident when we do the work that a significant value creation will be generated across the entire economy.
Great. Okay, we'll open up the floor to questions from everyone. You don't have to be a journalist. We'll start here. Name and affiliation, please.
Thank you. My name is Nishimura, freelance. The journalists always focus on both positive and negative aspects of everything, mainly negative one. And actually, there are a lot of discussions over using AI in warfare. So there is a discussion in United Nations over the lethal autonomous weapon system. So do you think, do you agree with those discussion of regulating AI in warfare? And do you think it is actually possible for us to regulate the AI in using warfare? And what does it affect your business? Thank you very much.
Yeah, so, the application of AI in warfare is an application that we absolutely must regulate. And I think the UN ban on use of lethal weaponry without a human in the loop, that seems like a good guideline that I do support. Certainly, at today's level of technology development, making sure that human decision making is involved seems like a very good idea. I know that there's some speculation that maybe someday AI decision making will be even better than human decision making, and it'd be irresponsible to not have AI be involved. But I think the technology is just not there right now. And warfare is an ugly business. But as we saw with Russia's invasion of Ukraine, there have been discoveries that Russian drones have used parts manufactured in Europe. So frankly, there are very non-democratic forces that clearly are using AI in warfare, and I would hate to ever see AI used in an unjust war. And candidly, living in California, I don't worry about enemy forces raiding my house, and part of me realizes that's because of the soldiers that are putting their lives on the line, protecting democracy, protecting our nation, so that my life is not on the line every day. So I feel that gratitude to the brave people in the militaries of well-run democracies that favor a liberal world order and the rule of law. And I feel like while I wish no one would ever use AI, certainly there are adverse forces that are using AI, and I would like to make sure that democracies have the tools they need to protect themselves.
Okay, we're running out of time, but I see the distinguished gentleman in the back of the room has his hand up.
That's my father, so.
I was going to let him identify himself.
My name is Ronald. I'm a medical practitioner, specialist. I'm also a mediator, principal mediator of the Singapore Mediation Center that mediates health complaints. I also act on behalf of the Medical Protection Society, which teaches young doctors how to reduce the risk of being sued. The reason why I drag in those things is one of the main things in the medical practice is even though medicine is a science, it has to be based on science, otherwise it would be quackery. But the practice of medicine itself is an art. And I want to know your opinion. With the gradual use of AI, no doubt, I have no doubt in time, it will make much more accurate diagnosis than the human doctor. And in the recommendation of treatments, it will also be much better. But in the recommendation of treatment and interactions, it takes away the empathy. I notice a lot of young doctors now, when they see patients, they're always on the computers. When empathy is, you notice eye contact, body language. How will that affect medical teaching and the practice of medicine if we continue to use more and more AI and the technology of the computer while decreasing the empathy side, the human interaction? My fear is there will be a rise in medical litigations, because in my mediation work, I see a lot of times patients sue the doctor because they feel they have not been treated as a human being. Yeah. So just to like your comments, I live in Singapore, he lives in Silicon Valley, so we seldom have this kind of conversation.
No, thank you, Father.
I feel like we're listening in on the young family dinner conversation.
Yeah. And I really owe it to my father teaching me about AI when I was a teenager that then kind of helped influence the direction of my career. I think my father's articulated a vision. I think you articulated it of if AI can do a lot of work to free up the doctor for more time for empathy, that could be one possible direction for healthcare, where if the doctor doesn't need to be transcribing notes all the time, if the AI can transcribe notes, then maybe the doctor can actually spend more time talking to the patient and build the empathy. So I think that's one possibility. And then maybe just because you're all reporters want to be candid, there's actually one very weird corner of the internet that I'm worried about, which is there's actually a large growing kind of fake boyfriend, fake girlfriend industry where AI is building what to a human feels surprisingly to the human like a real relationship. But I think sometimes I really question, it feels like it's not what I would consider a real relationship, even if emotionally it feels like that to some people. And actually, maybe a quick, my son, 2 years old, has a nemesis, has an enemy. His nemesis is our vacuum cleaner, is our robot vacuum cleaner at home. And apparently, when he's a little bit younger, he thought the vacuum cleaner is smart or something, and when he thinks we aren't looking, he'll secretly try to kick the vacuum cleaner. So humans, we tend to anthropomorphize things. We tend to look at a vacuum cleaner and think as an intelligent thing, or we look at a chatbot and think as an intelligent thing. And one thing that I am more worried about than bullish about is the fake boyfriend, fake girlfriend industry. And part of me worries as well if there are, fake doctor-patient relationships enabled by AI and what that future would look like. In terms of risk of AI, by the way, I think the fake boyfriend-girlfriend industry is one of the things that there is this part of the internet where it's growing. I don't see reporters talk about it that much, and there are very lonely people that I feel like are kind of being exploited by this technology. And if governments take a risk-based approach to AI, this would be one piece of the AI industry, one application worth taking a look at and regulating properly. But still, to return to my father's point, I hope that AI can support the building of human-to-human in relationships, because I think, after all, most of us do the work we do because we care about people and want to help people, and supporting that building of human relationships seems like an important thing for AI to try to do.
Can you take one more question?
Yeah, sure.
Last question. Okay, Anthony. I may cut you off if you ask a question that's already been asked.
Anthony Rowley, I write for the South China Morning Post and other. Sorry, I've only just come in. And my question is very general. So if you feel it's too general, please say it's too general. I don't quite understand. But obviously there's a lot of apprehension, fear about AI. Are we essentially still in control of the process? I mean, are there red lines that we've crossed which mean that it's going to be very difficult to keep control of AI, or are we still basically in control? How do we exert controls? Sorry, very big question, but any thoughts you have?
No, thank you. This is a great question. I think we are in control of AI, but we're not in perfect control. But it turns out that one of the reasons people are fearful of AI is they say, oh, you could never control AI. And it is true, you can't ever perfectly control even today's AI systems. But here's another example of something we can't control, airplanes. I flew on an airplane here to Japan. We flew through a little bit of turbulence over the ocean. So no one can perfectly control an airplane. We will be buffeted around by winds and turbulence. And in fact, if you look at the early history of aviation, airplanes crashed and people died, and it was tragic, right? And that was not good at all. But we learned from those accidents to learn to gradually better and better control airplanes, to the point where today we can all mostly, step into an airplane and not really worry about our safety, even though today no one can perfectly control an airplane. So I think it will be like that too for AI. We have actually wonderful tools for steering AI systems to make sure they're less toxic, less biased, less discriminative, more helpful. We have wonderful tools for doing that. It doesn't mean we'll be able to perfectly control it, but I think the risk of I think that what happened about last May was there was a statement published on the internet with a lot of PR that I think was quite irresponsible. I think it made an analogy between AI and nuclear weapons without any justification. I think AI brings more intelligence in the world. Nuclear weapons blows up cities. I don't see the relationship between that, but that generated a lot of media hype. Since then, the conversation has become much more sensible. When I was at Davos, speaking with many government leaders and AI technologists, this worry of losing control of AI or AI, becoming a competing species and wiping us out, that's really almost everyone, certainly at Davos, is relegating that to the realm of science fiction. And I feel like just like we can't perfectly control airplanes, we can't perfectly control AI, but we have wonderful tools for making them safe, and they're even becoming safer every day.
Okay, I think we will end on that note. I'd like you all to join me in thanking Andrew for joining us here this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you. And if you do want the generous we have for everyone, do cash, not sure what, cash either, I guess, not sure what element, do cash either on me, and we'd love to share that with you. Since I'm really, really grateful to all of you for the working on the journalism mission and trying to get the truth out there. So thank you all very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you very much.
No, thank you.
I learned a lot.
That's it.
So thank you very much. China, how is China doing on a competitive level? When it comes to regulations, China may not be so